You know, my mother used to always say that actions speak louder than words, and several House Republicans have said in recent days that they oppose the Alabama Supreme Court ruling, you know, the one that embryos have the same rights as living children. But just last year, 125 House Republicans signed onto legislation that's known as the Life at Conception bill. That bill contains language that echoes the IVF ruling. The co-sponsors include nearly a dozen Republicans running for re-election in competitive congressional districts. Look at their faces. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this with some experts, Georgetown law professor and On the Issues podcast host Michelle Goodwin, and Mark Joseph Stern, who's a senior staff writer at Slate and one of my favorite court watchers at the Supreme Court.
Professor Goodwin, you anticipated this about a decade ago. None of this is surprising.
I did, because between 2010 and 2013, there were more anti-abortion, anti-contraception laws that were proposed and enacted than the 30 years prior combined. At the time, people were asleep, sleepwalking with regard to all of this. And I was listening to what lawmakers were saying as they were promoting things that would ultimately get us to this point. For example, embryo adoption bills, which seem fine, cryopreserved embryos that couples no longer need, that they could be adopted by other couples. But behind it were lawmakers saying, and this will grant those embryos constitutional rights that will be on par with women. So their constitutional rights will meet the constitutional rights of women and may, in fact, even trump the constitutional rights of women.
How do we see this narrative playing out? I want to Mark, a comment on Michelle Steele of California. She is someone who, no relation, by the way, who is someone, I mean, you know, no E on the end, so it matters. But she is someone who has been out there saying, quote, as someone who struggled to get pregnant, I believe all life is a gift. IVF allowed me, as it has so many others, to start my family. I believe there's nothing more pro-life than helping families have children, and I do not support federal restrictions on IVF. But at the same time, she supports the Life at Conception bill. How do they reconcile? I'm not asking you to answer for them, but I mean, in terms of the narrative publicly, what should we take from that position? How do you see those two competing interests coming together?
I think what we have seen is an escalation of a movement that has become untethered to their own deep principles. For example, if you think about anti-abortion as being pro-natalist itself, that people should have babies, right, that's important for our country, right, or for certain populations of our country. What you see in the South Carolina ruling is that it's now become untethered from that. Now, where if embryos, Alabama, excuse me, thank you, that if embryos have rights, constitutional rights, civil rights, rights to be protected by the state, then of course that makes it very vulnerable for couples that might want to use these technologies. And this is where I think there is a pothole or a speed bump that they have now crossed, because there are many Republicans that have used these technologies. About 20% of American couples are infertile to begin with. And then there are any number of reasons why couples would want to use assisted reproductive technologies, including LGBTQ couples. Many couples now use these technologies. And I am sure across the country there are Republicans that are outraged by this Alabama decision and what might flow from it in other states, too.
You know, Mark, I mean, for years, elected officials will tell you that Republican elected officials will say, we did not run on jailing women, right, criminalizing doctors, criminalizing or banning IVF. But with the overturning of Roe versus Wade with the Dobbs decision, that's exactly what now is happening. Michelle, the professor, predicted this years ago, and did the justices tell us what was going to happen with the Supreme Court of majority opinion in Dobbs?
Absolutely. The three dissenters in Dobbs actually specifically called out IVF as a procedure that was clearly imperiled by the majority opinion allowing states to ban abortion. And the reason why is so obvious, right? IVF involves the destruction of some unused embryos. It can't work unless clinics and patients have a right to say we are disposing of these embryos that we no longer want or need. And yet the decision to overturn Roe allowed states to begin defining life not just at what they call conception, but at fertilization. And that's what's so pernicious about the federal bill that Congresswoman Steele co-sponsored. It defines life at fertilization and extends full legal equality, quote unquote, to fertilized embryos with the very obvious intent to outlaw or severely restrict IVF. And I think that those representatives must have known what they were doing, because there have been movements for personhood amendments all around the country, including in Alabama. This decision actually, it spurs in part from a personhood amendment to the Constitution that was written by anti-abortion activists to encompass not only abortion, but also IVF and even some forms of contraception that they call abortifacients. And I'll just note, there was a Senate version of this bill that we're talking about that had a carve out for IVF that said, we're not going to allow this legislation to be used to restrict IVF. The House bill did not have that carve out. The House knew what it was doing. And so for this Congresswoman to come in and now say, I would never support legislation to restrict IVF, that is exactly what she did. And if this bill ever passed and has more than 100 Republican co-sponsors, it would mean that every state's policy would suddenly mirror the policy of Alabama today. And IVF patients around the country would suddenly find their access to care cut off and their ability to build a family abolished.
Sometimes I think, Michelle, that people hear these stories and they say, wow, that is so tragic for families in Alabama. It is bigger than Alabama. Amanda Zarowski, who came to national prominence, she was denied an abortion in Texas. She nearly died. She has frozen embryos in Texas that she is now thinking about having to ship out of state in order to protect them should Texas take up a similar approach as Alabama. So here you have someone who is impacted not once, but twice.
Right. That's right. Post-Dobbs, there's been legal chaos. And to Mark's point, if you look at the state of Alabama and that Supreme Court, this is not their first time. They're actually building on a pre-Dobbs precedent where in a court ruling involving a law that had nothing to do with women, it was a child endangerment law, but prosecutors were weaponizing it against women. It was a law intended to actually go after men who were turning their homes into meth labs, and these meth labs blowing up or catching fire. And there was a real concern that children living in those families, in those homes, could be harmed. But what prosecutors did, rather than going after those men, decided that they would go after pregnant women who would tell their doctors about their social medical history. When a doctor asks, well, do you drink wine? How many glasses a week? Have you used an illicit drug? Do you use prescription medications? And prosecutors sought to get that information in Alabama from doctors and nurses and use it against those patients. And there was one who challenged this because she said, this is private information that I'm sharing with my doctors. I'm going for prenatal care. I want to have this child. The Alabama Supreme Court ruled that there was no difference between a child and a fetus and no difference between a child and a non-viable fetus. And this was pre-Dobbs. But to your point, yes, this is a kind of wreckage that we may see across myriad states because often these clinics work in different states. And already in Alabama, you have a university saying, we're going to suspend. You have organizations saying, we won't transport into that state. It is pure chaos that has resulted now in the wake of Dobbs.
The cruelty and the chaos is the point. Michelle Goodwin, Mark Joseph Stern, thank you both.